Mi famildem, una cabo. Bon après-midi, Masal Heri. Dubridin, Uan, buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Onikesi Spencer Coker. Please call me Nikki. I'm the spokesperson for the Permanent Mission of Sierra Leone to the United Nations in New York. I will make it my duty and pleasure to be at your service for media relations throughout this month of August 2024, the month during which Sierra Leone assumes the presidency of the United Nations Security Council. Before handing over to His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Micheal Imran Kanu, Permanent Representative of Sierra Leone to the United Nations in New York and President of the United Nations Security Council for this month, I'd like to remind all of those who will ask questions to kindly introduce themselves and identify their media organization. To all those in this room, but also to all those monitoring this press briefing from UN Web TV, a very warm welcome to all. Without further ado, I now have the honor to cede the floor to Ambassador Kanu. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nikki. Good afternoon, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I must say it's good to be in the room. I see it on TV all the time, following your engagement, and so it's good to be in your presence, and thank you really for honoring our invitation to be in this press conference. As President of the United Nations Security Council for August 2024, I am pleased to present the Council's program of work for the month. But before going to the program of work itself, allow me to say a few words in my national capacity. On a historic note, Sierra Leone is pleased to assume the presidency of the Security Council, following a return to the Council after 53 years from a previous tenure in 1970 to 1971. We last held the presidency in December 1971, following our initial presidency, first presidency, in September 1970. So it hasn't been a long time ago, and we should be familiar with this. Since then, Sierra Leone has experienced a decade of civil conflict from 1991 to 2000, and 2 decades of post-conflict recovery, peace building, and improving democratic governance. We've achieved all of this working in partnership with the United Nations. And so we say we're here with a unique experience, and that is why we've underscored the importance of partnership, representation, and effective multilateralism to sustain global peace and security. It was only on 26 March 2014, in its 7,148th meeting, that the Council last met on the situation in Sierra Leone. In just 10 years, Sierra Leone will preside over the Council, a remarkable transformation for which we are very proud and humble as well. We are also proud of the vision and leadership of His Excellency Dr. Julius Maada Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, inspiring this remarkable transformation in Sierra Leone's foreign policy. In the Council for the past 7 months, and I hope you agree with me, Sierra Leone has endeavored to be a voice of reason, a bridge builder with balance and objectivity, a principled voice committed to promoting respect for and adherence to international law, the UN Charter, ensure the protection of civilians, end impunity through accountability, and foster dialogue for peaceful settlement of dispute. Now, if you may, I'll just say a few words on working methods. During our presidency, we'll be dedicated to enhancing efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, and inclusivity. We will foster a consensus-building approach, uphold the practices and principles of the Council, and certainly maintain the highest standard of diplomacy and cooperation. With our Women, Peace and Security commitment, we will endeavor to include gender perspective and participation in our meetings as appropriate. Now, on to our signature event for August and a thematic briefing which will convene. Sierra Leone will hold two signature events. The first is a focused debate on United Nations Security Council reform. It will be the first time to have such a debate, and it will address the historical injustice and enhancing Africa's effective representation in the Security Council. It will be a high-level meeting to be held on the 12th of August, and His Excellency President Bio will preside. The briefers will include UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the President of the General Assembly, Dennis Francis, and we'll also have a briefer from academia. The second signature event, which will be an open debate on the 21st August, will focus on the new agenda for peace, addressing global, regional, and national aspects of conflict prevention under the agenda Peace Building and Sustaining Peace. Briefers will include ASG Elizabeth Spearha, the African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Bankole Adoye. We'll have a briefer from the Sierra Leone Independent Commission for Peace and National Cohesion, Ms. Hawa Samai, and a CSO briefer. On 7th August, we'll call the thematic briefing on sustaining women, peace and security commitment in the context of accelerated drawdown of peace operations. We'll have ASG Matapobi, UN Women Executive Director Sima Bahus, and a civil society briefer in the meeting. So now I will wear the hat as President of Security Council, and I'll briefly go through the program of work which was adopted this morning. Today, 1st August, we had consultations at 11:30 after a meeting of the permanent representatives and the political coordinator, leading to the adoption of the program of work. And next week, we'll commence on the 5th of August in a meeting. It will be a briefing on International Criminal Court Sudan. We expect ICC prosecutor Karim Khan to brief. On the 8th of August, the Council anticipates adoption on the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia, that's ATMIS. And this will be followed by a briefing on threats to international peace and security, Mayor Voronkov and seated Executive Director, ASG Natalie German, to brief. Although we would have a Secretary General's report for this meeting, Sierra Leone would encourage members of the Council to focus also on the security challenges in West Africa and the Sahel relating to terrorism in this meeting. In the third week, and moving on to the 14th August, since we'll have the 12th August signature event, which I've described, there will be a briefing and consultation on the United Nations mission in South Sudan, and the briefer is expected to be SRSG Nicholas Haysom. In the afternoon, there will be a troop contributing country meeting on United Nations interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, and we'll have the Deputy Military Advisor, Major General Cheryl Pierce, to brief. On 15th August, the Council will have the briefing and consultations on Middle East Yemen. Briefers are Special Envoy Hans Gromberg. We'll expect to have the Director of OCHA, Ramesh Rajasingham, and also General Michael Berry to brief, and he will brief in consultation. In the 4th week of August, the Council will hold consultations on the United Nations interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, on 19th August, and ASG Khalid Kiari is expected to brief. This will be followed on the 20th August by briefing and consultation on the United Nations support mission in Libya and Libya sanctions. OIC DRSSG Stephanie Corey and the chair of the 1970 committee are expected to brief. And on 22nd August, the Council will have the monthly briefing and consultation on Middle East Palestine question. And we expect Special Coordinator Tom Wennesland to brief. In the final week, on 28th August, the Council will hold a briefing and consultation on Middle East, Syria. Special Envoy Greg Peterson will brief, and another briefer for OCHA is expected. On the 29th of August, the Council anticipates adoption on UNIFIL, and this will be followed by consultation on the 1718 committee. That's the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and the chair of the 1718 committee will brief. We'll have the monthly wrap-up session on 30th August. As you may have appreciated, there are issues which have not been indicated on the program of work, but for which the Council may be called upon to pay attention to. And of course, I'll be happy to engage on those. Would also expect adoption on UNOCA, that's the United Nations Regional Office for Central Africa, and the continuing negotiations on the requests by the Democratic Republic of Congo and SADC in relation to SAMI DRC. I should note that in the final week, the presidency has taken note of the invitation of the government of Switzerland to council members to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Geneva Conventions, and this will take place in Geneva on the 26th August. The work of the council will continue, but of course we accommodated the initiative, and of course we look forward to the participation of council members in the important commemoration. In the month of August, it is busy with many mandated meetings, but we look forward to having a productive month, and we'll appreciate certainly the cooperation of members, and we look forward to engaging with the members of the Security Council as well. The presidency will be guided by the decisions of the Council, and let me use this opportunity to really sincerely express our gratitude and support to the Secretariat, particularly SCAD, for their support. You've heard from Micheal already, our spokesperson. I'm sure you know her very well, and she'll be available to you to engage with you and answer some of the questions that you may have. This is unorthodox, but let me also use this opportunity to really thank my dedicated team of staff in the mission for their excellent work leading to this presidency. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
In the absence of our president of the UNCA, I'll take the first question right here from Ephraim. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Ronike. Thanks, Ambassador. I have two questions, one on Sudan. When you look at Sudan and the way the war is evolving over there, and in the light of what you just said in your introduction about Sierra Leone having gone through this kind of conflict and also witnessed transformation in the past 10 years, what is it that, of your experience, that you bring into this conflict, and how are you going to highlight it in the Security Council? I also have another question on Security Council reforms. We've seen throughout the past couple of years Kuwait and Austria leading the debate on that. We've seen a lot of televised debates that offered a lot of food for thought on these reforms, but we haven't really seen any actual progress in real life regarding those reforms. And looking at the Pact of the Future, that the draft we just read, I know it's not the final draft yet, but apparently Security Council reforms occupy just a small paragraph, and I think all we're going to get is an office at the UN to talk about it more. So how do you plan to highlight this issue more, and also is there a vision that you have to towards concrete results regarding this issue? Thank you. Sorry, Ephraim Kosaifi with Arab News.
Thank you. Ambassador, would you like to go straight to the answer, and then we'll go to the next question?
Yes, I think it will be important to answer the questions and then as they come. Thank you so much for the question on Sudan. Certainly we'll have the meeting on ICC Sudan, which is focused on the Security Council referral. But the first question on Sierra Leone's experience. In the introductory remarks, I said that we went through a period of a decade of civil conflict, and this was followed by 2 decades of peace building and certainly improving democratic governance. Sierra Leone is seen as a success story in terms of the partnership with the Security Council and the UN in resolving our conflicts. But there are many aspects and some similarities with Sudan. So firstly, in terms of resolution of conflict, I think the importance is to stress the need for dialogue, the application of the UN Charter. When our own situation was really dire, at some point in time, it took the dedicated focus of the leadership to call for talks, to engage with then the leader of the rebel faction. Incidentally, it was then President Buyo, who was also head of state at the moment. And that was significant because in every successful peace resolution scenario, you need the process, cessation of hostility, and you need the dialogue to keep that going. You also have to address the humanitarian crisis. We had a situation where in Sudan now potentially there is famine. And so having the requisite support and humanitarian access is critical. You have to look at the other component of the crisis as well. So humanitarian, you have to look at the question of impunity, accountability. We had, again, a model transitional justice process of truth-telling and accountability. So we'll bring all of that experience to bear. And Sudan is a concern, but we'll be also very supportive to resolve the conflict and then continue on the peace-building phase. With respect to Security Council reform, of course, this is a priority. It's one of the 8 priorities going into the Council. Sierra Leone holds the high responsibility of leading the African Union Committee of 10 as coordinator on the reform of Security Council. The negotiations on Security Council reform takes place at the UN General Assembly. And so we'll have the first debate on the issue in the Security Council. It's unprecedented. And it's really to elevate the discussion. The discussion in the General Assembly has gone on for a while. But to answer your question on the Summit of the Future, Pact of the Future declaration, I think what you have now in the text that has been circulated is a placement. There is substantive text and negotiation ongoing being led by the co-chairs. And some of the important demands made by the African group, I think, have been reflected in that text, and we will hope that that also will be reflected in the final declaration, because it speaks to rectifying the historical injustice, so mirroring what we'll have in the debate for Africa to be treated as a special case and for Africa to be prioritized. And I think it will be significant for the heads of state and government to make that declaration in the Summit of the Future. Thank you again.
Thank you. Another question? I think somebody had their hand up in the middle. Yeah, go ahead, Amelie.
Thank you. Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. On the Middle East and the escalation of the tension, I mean, there's on the program, there's the usual monthly meeting on the Palestinian question, but do you foresee any other meeting before that, considering the situation is getting more and more tense? Thank you.
As President of the Council, I would say, and thank you, Amelie. As President of the Council, I would say that we have already in the program of work the monthly meeting. And in the engagement this morning, of course, Council members, and including yesterday's meeting, Council members have expressed concern given the situation in the Middle East. What I can say is that we're committed to call for a meeting if it's requested by member states. It's an important issue, and so we'll continue to pay the necessary attention that is required.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. First, I want to ask you about your opinion on the ICJ legal opinion about the Israeli occupation in the occupied Palestinian territory. The ICJ said it's illegal, it should be ended, settlers should be evacuated. Israel has no sovereignty over the occupied territories, so the concept of self-defense does not apply in the West Bank. Does the Palestinian people have the right to resist occupation the way many of your African countries, including yourself, fought colonialist and foreign domination and foreign intervention? Thank you.
I will answer your question. Thank you, Abdulhamid. I will answer your question using the hat of the President of the Security Council to say that if there is a request for engagement on the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, of course, based on the rules, we'll be open to ensuring that we allow member states to proceed as requested. And in the national capacity, in terms of the importance of the advisory opinion, I will not give you a legal opinion now. I think the International Court of Justice has clearly laid out their view on the issue. But the important bit is that they've asked both the United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council to move forward with modalities. I think that is one aspect that we'll look out for, looking at what engaging with the General Assembly to ensure that there's complementarity and aspects which the Security Council will need to address. I'm sure that will be guided by the members of the Council on how to proceed. Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Sorry. Thank you, Nikki. Hi, Ambassador. Carrie Naughton from Le Monde and RFI, Radio France Internationale. I was wondering if anyone requested a meeting on Haiti, because we know that the first contingent of Kenyan troops have arrived, but we know also they're in a dire need of vehicles and help and funding. And it looks like the international community is kind of forgetting about Haiti, when I'm very happy to see Sudan on the program of work. And second question, are you planning to evoke or talk about the African missions, like there's a new system of peacekeeping missions funded by the UN, but going through the African Union, and we know that Haiti actually kind of mission was kind of a prototype. So what do you think about it? Are you going to evoke it?
Thank you so much, Karine. On Haiti, to answer your question, yes, the consultations this morning, we had a member state that spoke about the importance to pay attention to development in Haiti. There is no mandated meeting, that's why it's not on the program of work, but certainly if a member state will request for a meeting on Haiti, given the development after the deployment of the Kenyan contingent, I think as the presidency will be certainly open to moving forward with that. On the question of African missions and relating to funding, I think you are really asking a question on Resolution 2719, which is important. We have issues on the agenda for which 2719 will be pivotal, whether you're considering ATMIS adoption or the negotiations ongoing in terms of SAMI-DRC or any other peacekeeping mission that may require resources. I think the resolution was adopted simply to provide the opportunity for the Council to look into 2719 if it's applicable in the context. And our role as President will really to lead the Council to look at it. If I should look at the issue from an A3 plus perspective, as a member of the A3 plus, certainly I think it is important for 2719 to be fully utilized to address some of the challenges we have in the continent. But this has to be done in cooperation and consultation with the rest of the Security Council members.
Thank you. Murad Hashim, Al Jazeera Arabic. More than 165 journalists have been killed in Gaza since October, including 2 Al Jazeera journalists have been killed in direct Israeli attack yesterday. What's your position, and how this issue should be addressed by the Security Council, specifically regarding the accountability?
Thank you so much. It's really an important question. I recall that when we noted the high fatalities of journalists in Gaza, Sierra Leone spoke on this issue in the Council to draw attention to it, that in addition to, of course, protecting civilians, protected persons, journalists should not bear the brunt of the hostilities, and they should be protected. Already we have a solid legal framework or resolutions in the Security Council really underscoring this point. And so your question on accountability would be important to ensure that if protected persons are not protected, as it were, under international law, then there has to be a follow-through. What we can do, and I'm answering this in my national capacity, by the way, what we can do as council members is continue to amplify and highlight the importance for the protections of humanitarian workers and those who are protected under conflict situation, journalists, and this could also include the plight of human rights defenders and those who are offering assistance to civilians in difficult circumstances. And I hope eventually accountability will set in to forestall the continuation of such activities.
Thank you for your briefing. My name is Yu from Kyodo News, Japanese news agency. So I have 2 questions about your signature event. First, are you ready for any outcome including like a document? And then second, so why did you choose the topic of Security Council reform as the Security Council? So you have already mentioned partially, but could you make me more comments?
Thank you for the important question. In terms of product, the answer is no, simply because, as I've indicated at the beginning, the negotiations taking place in the UN General Assembly. That's where we have the IGN. But as you know, in the process to get to reform, you need all of the permanent 5 members to agree, and of course, 2/3 majority of member states. There have been expressed support for Africa, some general. I believe the conversation in the Security Council will really lead to specifically rectifying the historical injustice, and we expect really at that high level for clear declaration and support for the rectification of historical injustice. So we'll have an elevated debate. We'll have those who are interested in the issue to speak up, and this will build, it's a good momentum builder to the Summit of the Future. Certainly the Pact of the Future question has been asked, and hopefully when we get to the General Assembly, we'll have some meaningful progress in addition to the progress that we made over time. Thank you again. I think I've answered both questions by this response. Yeah.
Did you? We'll come back. Yeah. And then here, and we'll come back here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Nikki. Ambassador Xu Deju with China Central Television. You've been in the Security Council for a couple of months. So from your national capacity, what do you think is now the biggest problem with the Council? And some people commented, they said the Security Council is one of the most important institutions here to maintain international peace and security. But when it concerned about Palestinian question, it feels the Security Council looks like a model United Nations. What is your response? Thank you.
In my national capacity, thank you. I think the situation which you've described has given the opportunity for Council members to really show the various characteristics or features which reflect our current world. I'll go to the positive. We had the resolution which was co-sponsored by the 10 elected members. It's not monolithic that every elected member will think the same or will have the same interest. But because of the importance of the situation and the need for call for ceasefire leading to Ramadan, we got all of the 10 elected members to agree to sponsor a resolution. That's a demonstration of unity. And I think our role in the Security Council in national capacity is really to be a bridge builder. We understand that the United Nations is not an organization of like-minded states, and so you have to bring everyone together. That's the spirit of cooperation. And so I will answer your question in that light, understanding that moving from the basis that we're not a like-minded organization, there has to be the need to build cooperation, ensure the unity of the Council. And we've really adopted a number of resolutions, which shows that when called upon to discharge its responsibility, the Council will act, sometimes not timely, and we'll continue to call for implementation. There are various approaches to it in terms of the resolution. And in this context, all that we can do, particularly elected member in Sierra Leone, is to ensure that you bring all members together, and that is the role I think we've played for 7 months and will continue to play for the rest of our tenure in Security Council.
Hi, I'm Dulcie Linebuck. I had a couple of questions. One was back on the ICJ rulings in May. South Africa's ambassador came to the Security Council to deliver all the documentation related to the ICJ rulings for occupied Palestine and Israel, the rulings from January, March, and May, to effectively get the Council to start enforcing those rulings, given that that's the Council's job. So what has it been doing in that regard?
Thank you so much. On the South Africa versus Israel case, my understanding, again answering in my national capacity, my understanding is that there are provisional measures. Of course, provisional measures are binding on the parties, and they should be implemented. And what has happened over time is that South Africa has gone to the court where there has been non-compliance to ask for further orders. There are provisions in the charter that would ask for applications of the various tools within the Charter for the Security Council if called upon. I do not think that has been done necessarily. The ICJ is a principal organ of the United Nations. It has really declared itself very clearly on the issue in terms of provisional measures. And the hope is that because it's binding on the parties will comply. What the Council has done over time is to really call on the parties to comply with their obligations under international law, which will include orders of binding orders of the International Court of Justice.
The Council as a whole has called on the parties to carry out these rulings? How have they done that?
I think I will not go into the details of the resolutions, but again, in a national capacity, my appreciation of a council call on compliance with international law. Of course, you have to look at the various levels. It includes, of course, binding orders of the International Court of Justice, which is binding on the parties.
Can I ask one more question about the quest for an African permanent seat? So do you anticipate a big announcement at UNGA in September regarding this request or this demand? Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's another important question. So the step-by-step approach, firstly, we'll have the debate on the 12th. We're looking forward to a very successful debate with clear views on rectifying the historical injustice. Second will be a summit of the future, where we'll have in the declaration this language on rectifying the historical injustice, prioritizing Africa and treating Africa as a special case. Post the summit of the future, which is part of UNGA, we had a ministerial meeting in Algeria, that is the African Union Committee of 10 on Security Council reform. And of course, we've been asked to engage in an enhanced way in the intergovernmental negotiations, including the submission of an African model. The belief is that there will be sufficient momentum to really move this issue, which is needed. Next year will be the 80th anniversary at the UN, and I think questions could be asked if we'll have a United Nations at 80 without a permanent seat for Africa.
Again, thank you again, Mr. Abdul Hamid again. I have a few questions again on Palestine, sir. When countries violate international law, normally there are sanctions like what happened in North Korea, what happened in former Yugoslavia, Iraq, many countries, including your country when Sankuh staged a coup against Muhammad Janah Kabba, who was a UN staff, I know him personally. There was sanctions until the coup failed. Now there is a country, which is a member of the United Nations, violating every piece of international law. Security Council resolutions, General Assembly resolution, ICJ, Human Rights Council, committing atrocities day in and day out against children, women, destroying the cultural system in Gaza, destroying hospitals, attacking children. Every violation you can imagine is being committed as we speak in Gaza. Yet, it's treated just like a normal country, and no one talk about sanctions, no one talk about expelling this country from the UN. What more can be a failure of the international system in dealing with this rogue state called Israel?
In the capacity of President of Security Council, I note that Council members have expressed concern in the situation in Gaza, of course, called for, we had the resolution 2735, which is clear on supporting the current efforts to reach a ceasefire and the release of hostages. And so we note that continuing. In my national capacity, I will say that sanctions are part of the myriad of tools within the UN Charter, which the Council could employ. There is a process to it, and I think if there is interest, that process could be activated by a member of the Council. But it is in the Charter and available to Council members.
Sorry, may I follow up? I mean, the Security Council keep talking about two-state solution, as you know. The Israeli Knesset voted recently. They will prevent any the establishment of a state in Palestine. They voted. So they said it will be a terrorist state if it's established. So talking about two-state solution, is it possible? Is it viable? Do you think there is any chance to establish a independent, viable, contiguous Palestinian state? Thank you.
I can only answer that in my national capacity. And I will refer you to the ICJ opinion, I think, which was very authoritative on self-determination and the two-state solution.
Oh, thank you, Ambassador. My name is Sinan. I'm with Ruda Media Network, and wishing you best of the luck for the month. Secretary General made a statement yesterday, and he said that the international community must work together to urgently prevent any actions that could push the entire Middle East over the edge. So basically, he asked for a diplomatic de-escalation, and I wonder what's your response to this call. And in addition, Iran has been talking about a retaliation against Israel, and also if you have a comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question and the kind words. We had a meeting of the Council yesterday, and I think from the Secretariat perspective, USG was Marie Di Carlo briefed, and we heard from Council members and those who were invited to participate. I think the overall, there's concern in terms of possibility of escalation, but there's been call for restraint, and I think we can only offer support to the words of the Secretary General, given the situation now in the Middle East. But I can only say that Council members are concerned, and of course will continue to pay attention to this issue.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Ambassador Kanu, and I thank the United Nations Correspondents Association and its reporters and all of you who have attended this briefing this afternoon. We will have a transcript of Ambassador Kanu's remarks available. If you would like a copy, we also have copies of the media note that we sent to some of you via email, also available. And so if you are interested in picking up a copy, you can do so from my colleague in the back as you're exiting. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon, and we'll see you some more throughout the month.